Hürtgen Forest, Germany, November 18, 1944. Sergeant Jack Morrison had forgotten what it felt like to be dry. The Hürtgen Forest was a green hell of mud, rain, and death. 15,000 acres of dense German woodland along the Belgian-German border, every tree a potential sniper's nest, every path zeroed in by German artillery. The forest floor was carpeted with pine needles that muffled the sound of approaching enemies. The canopy was so thick that artillery airburst shells detonated in the treetops, sending shrapnel and wood splinters down like deadly rain. Morrison's company, Baker Company, 2nd Battalion, 8th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division, had been fighting in this forest for 6 days. They'd advanced maybe 3 miles. 3 miles that had cost them 40 men killed, 60 wounded. The Germans defended every yard with savage determination. Pillboxes, machine gun nests, mortars, artillery, and mines. God, the mines. They were everywhere, buried under leaves and snow, waiting to tear men apart. Morrison was 26 years old, a farm boy from Iowa who'd been drafted in 1942. He'd survived North Africa, Sicily, D-Day at Utah Beach, and the breakout from Normandy. He'd been promoted to sergeant after his squad leader was killed at St. Lo. He'd earned a Bronze Star for valor during the push through France. He was a good soldier, tough, competent, experienced. But the Hürtgen Forest was breaking him. His squad had started the campaign with 12 men. Now they were down to 7. Ramirez had stepped on a mine 2 days ago. They'd buried what was left of him in a shallow grave marked with his rifle. Collins had taken shrapnel from a tree burst yesterday. Medevaced out, probably wouldn't make it. Others wounded, scattered, lost in the green chaos of this endless forest. The 7 who remained huddled in a hastily dug foxhole, trying to stay below the tree line, trying to stay alive. It was late afternoon, the light already fading under the dense canopy. They'd been ordered to hold this position, a small clearing near what the maps called Hill 232, while the rest of the battalion regrouped after a failed assault that morning. "Sarge, I got movement. 2 o'clock, maybe 50 yards. Private First Class Danny Sullivan, the squad scout, pointed into the trees. Morrison raised his head slowly, water dripping from his helmet. He peered through the gloom and rain. There, shadows moving between the pines. Men, Germans, hard to tell how many in the poor visibility. "Weapons ready?" Morrison whispered. "Hold fire until I give the word. Could be a patrol, could be a probe before a bigger attack." His men shifted, bringing their rifles to bear. M1 Garands, the reliable semi-automatic that had carried them through 2 years of war. Thompson had the squad's bar, the Browning automatic rifle, a devastating weapon in the right hands. Kennedy had the radio, trying to raise battalion command through the static and atmospheric interference that plagued communications in the forest. The German shadows grew closer. Morrison could make out more details now. 4 men, moving cautiously, weapons ready. Wehrmacht infantry, by the look of their uniforms and coal scuttle helmets. A patrol probably, or maybe a forward observation team for their artillery. 40 yards, 35. Morrison's finger tightened on his trigger. Close quarters in the forest meant you shot first and fast, or you died. There was no room for hesitation. 30 yards. Then everything went to hell. The Germans spotted them at the same moment. Both sides opened fire simultaneously. The forest exploded with gunfire. Muzzle flashes in the gloom, bullets snapping through air and thudding into trees, men shouting in German and English. Morrison fired 3 quick shots, saw 1 German soldier spin and fall. Thompson's bar hammered away, long bursts that chewed through the undergrowth. Sullivan threw a grenade that detonated with a muffled crump, sending dirt and pine needles flying. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds, an eternity of chaos and violence. When it ended, 3 German soldiers lay dead or dying in the clearing. The 4th had disappeared into the trees. "Check them," Morrison ordered. "Make sure they're dead. Take any intelligence, maps, documents, anything." Sullivan and Thompson moved forward cautiously, rifles ready. They checked the bodies. 2 dead, 1 dying, a bullet through his lung, drowning in his own blood. Thompson put a mercy round in his head. It was kinder than letting him suffer. They searched the bodies, found some letters, a map with German positions marked, a few photographs of families back home. Standard stuff. Morrison pocketed the map. Intelligence might find it useful. "Sarge," Kennedy called from the foxhole. "I got battalion on the horn. They're saying Jerry's massing for a counterattack. We're supposed to fall back to the rally point at—" He never finished the sentence. The German artillery strike came without warning, shells detonating in the treetops with devastating effect. Shrapnel and wooden splinters rained down. The forest became a storm of steel and screaming. Morrison threw himself flat, covering his head. Around him, his men did the same. The barrage lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. When it finally stopped, his ears were ringing so badly he couldn't hear anything but a high-pitched whine. He raised his head. "Sound off." "Who's hit?" Voices called back, muffled and distant through his damaged hearing. Thompson, "Okay." Sullivan, "Okay." Kennedy, wounded, shrapnel in his leg but conscious. Davis, "Okay." Miller, "Okay." Rodriguez, no answer. "Rodriguez, sound off." Still no answer. Morrison crawled over to where Rodriguez had been. Found him face down in the mud, his back shredded by shrapnel. Dead. Another name to add to the list Morrison kept in his head, the list that grew longer every day. "God damn it," Morrison whispered. Then louder. "We're moving. That barrage means they're coming. Grab Rodriguez's ammo and dog tags. We move in 2 minutes." They moved through the forest, heading west toward where battalion had said the rally point was. Kennedy limped along, supported by Davis. The others carried extra ammo, weapons, everything they could salvage. In the forest, you never knew when you'd need supplies. They'd covered maybe 200 yards when Sullivan, on point, raised his fist, the signal to halt. Morrison moved up beside him. "What you got?" "Bunker, German, about 30 yards ahead, right on our route." Morrison peered through the trees. There, a concrete pillbox barely visible in the undergrowth, one of the thousands of German defensive positions that dotted the forest. It looked abandoned, but you could never be sure. "Could be empty," Sullivan whispered. "Could be full of Krauts waiting to shred us. Can we go around?" "Not without adding another mile to our route, and Kennedy's not going to make it that far with his leg." Morrison made the call. "We clear it. Thompson, you and me. Rest of you cover us. We go fast and hard. If there's anybody in there, we kill them before they can react." They moved forward in a combat crouch, weapons ready. The bunker loomed larger. It was old, probably built during the Siegfried Line construction years ago. Concrete walls, firing slits, a heavy steel door that stood partially open. Morrison reached the door first. He pulled a grenade from his belt, pulled the pin, and tossed it inside. He and Thompson threw themselves flat. The grenade detonated with a muffled boom inside the concrete structure. They waited 3 seconds, then Morrison was up and moving, Thompson right behind him. They burst through the door, rifles sweeping the interior. The bunker was small, maybe 15 feet square. A machine gun position by the looks of the MG-42 mounted near one of the firing slits. Empty ammunition crates, discarded ration tins, and in the corner, partially hidden behind a pile of supply boxes, a figure, a German soldier. Morrison's rifle snapped up, finger on trigger, already squeezing. Then he saw the face, a kid, a boy. Couldn't have been more than 14, maybe 15 years old. He wore an oversized Wehrmacht uniform that hung on his thin frame. His coal scuttle helmet was too big, sitting at an angle on his head. His face was streaked with dirt and tears. And his eyes were wide with terror, staring at Morrison and Thompson like he was looking at death itself. He wasn't holding a weapon. His hands were up, trembling violently. He was saying something in German over and over, his voice high-pitched and cracking with fear. "Bitte nicht schießen, bitte nicht schießen. Ich bin erst 15. Morrison didn't speak German, but he understood the pleading tone. The kid was begging for his life. "Jesus Christ," Thompson muttered. "He's just a baby. What the hell is he doing here?" Morrison's finger was still on the trigger. His rifle was pointed at the kid's chest, point-blank range. All he had to do was squeeze. One shot. The kid would be dead before he hit the ground. One less enemy. One less threat. That's what soldiers did. That's what war was. You killed the enemy before they killed you. The kid wore a German uniform. He was the enemy. Didn't matter how old he was. But Morrison couldn't squeeze the trigger. The kid was crying now, tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on his face. He was still saying something in German, the same phrases over and over. His whole body was shaking. "Sarge," Thompson said quietly, "what do we do?" Morrison stared at this German boy soldier. He thought about his own kid brother back in Iowa. Tommy was 16, would be draft age soon if the war didn't end. Morrison had written him letters, told him about the war, tried to prepare him for what might come. Tommy was a good kid, played baseball, helped on the farm, had a girl he was sweet on. This German kid probably had a family too. Probably had been playing whatever German kids played before they stuck a uniform on him and threw him into this meat grinder. "How old are you?" Morrison asked, knowing the kid probably didn't understand. The boy's eyes flicked between Morrison and Thompson. He said something in German. Then in heavily accented English, 15, 15 years. 15, Morrison repeated. Jesus Christ. "Sarge, we gotta make a decision," Thompson said. "The rest of the squad's waiting. And if there's one German soldier here, there might be more." Morrison knew Thompson was right. They should kill the kid, or at least take him prisoner, bring him back for interrogation. But taking prisoners in the Hürtgen Forest was a death sentence. You couldn't spare men to guard them, couldn't spare the food and water to keep them alive. Killing him was the smart play, the safe play. But Morrison lowered his rifle. "Stand up," he told the kid in English, gesturing with his hands. Slowly. No sudden moves. The boy stood, his legs barely supporting him. He looked like he might faint from fear. Morrison searched him quickly. No weapons, no grenades, just a scared kid in a uniform. In his pocket, Morrison found a photograph, the boy with an older couple, probably his parents, standing in front of a farmhouse. The back of the photo had writing in German and a date, 1943. Morrison stared at that photograph for a long moment. Then he made a decision that went against every bit of training, every tactical consideration, every rule of war. "You're going to walk out of here," Morrison said slowly, pointing at the door. "You're going to go west, that way." He pointed. "You keep walking until you're out of this forest. You find Americans, you surrender. You understand? Americans, surrender. No more fighting." The kid stared at him, not comprehending. Morrison pulled out his own photograph, his family back in Iowa. He pointed to himself in the photo, then to the kid's photograph, then back to his own. "Family, you, me, same. Go home. No more war." Understanding dawned in the kid's eyes. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. He nodded frantically. "Danke, danke. Thank you, thank you." "Get out of here," Morrison said, "before I change my mind." The boy stumbled toward the door, moving like he expected to be shot in the back any second. He reached the doorway, paused, looked back at Morrison one more time. Then he was gone, running into the forest, disappearing into the trees. Thompson stared at Morrison. "Sarge, you know that was—" "Don't," Morrison cut him off. "Don't say it. I know what I did. If command finds out, they won't, because you're not going to tell them. Nobody is." They exited the bunker. The rest of the squad looked at them expectantly. "Clear?" Sullivan asked. "Clear," Morrison confirmed. "Let's move." They continued toward the rally point, Morrison's mind churning. He'd let an enemy soldier go. A German soldier. Maybe that kid would pick up a rifle tomorrow and shoot an American. Maybe he'd be in a machine gun nest the next time Baker Company assaulted a German position. Maybe Morrison had just signed some American soldier's death warrant, but every time he started to regret his decision, he saw that kid's face. 15 years old, terrified, crying, just a boy who'd been thrown into a war he didn't understand, fighting for a country that was collapsing, for a cause that was already lost. They reached the rally point as darkness fell. Battalion was setting up a defensive perimeter. The aid station was overflowing with wounded. Morrison reported to his company commander, Captain Richards, gave him the captured German map, reported their casualties. "Good work, Sergeant," Richard said tiredly. The captain looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. "Get your men some hot food if you can find any. We're attacking again tomorrow at 600. Morrison found his squad a relatively dry spot under some trees. They broke out their K rations, ate in silence. Kennedy's leg had been treated by a medic. He'd live, but he was being evacuated in the morning. Rodriguez's personal effects had been collected, would be sent home to his family in Texas. That night, Morrison couldn't sleep. He kept seeing that German kid's face, kept wondering if he'd done the right thing. Around midnight, Private Sullivan crawled over to Morrison's position. "Sarge, you awake?" "Yeah." "About that kid in the bunker?" "Drop it, Sullivan." "No, Sarge. I need to say this. What you did, that took guts. More guts than shooting him would have taken." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "I might have killed one of our own by letting him go. Maybe. Or maybe you saved him. Maybe he'll surrender like you told him to. Maybe he'll make it home to his family. Maybe you saved the only life you could save in this whole goddamn forest." That's a lot of maybes. War's full of maybes, Sarge. But I know this. I've been in your squad for 8 months. I've seen you make hard calls. Life and death stuff. And every time you try to do the right thing. Today wasn't any different. Sullivan crawled back to his position. Morrison lay in the mud, staring up at the dark canopy above, and tried to believe that what he'd done was right. The next morning, Baker Company attacked again. More yards gained, more men lost. The Hürtgen Forest consumed them all. Morrison survived another week in the forest before catching shrapnel from a tree burst. Nothing fatal. Shrapnel in his shoulder and arm. Painful but not life-threatening. They evacuated him to a field hospital, then back to England for recovery. He spent 3 weeks in a hospital bed, his arm immobilized, recovering. Other wounded men filled the beds around him. They swapped stories, the way soldiers do, tried to make sense of what they'd been through. One night, a new patient was brought into Morrison's ward, a kid, maybe 19, from a different division. He'd been hit by machine gun fire during the final push through the Hürtgen. He was in bad shape, wasn't going to make it. The doctors had done what they could, but he was bleeding internally, fading fast. Morrison was awake when the kid started calling out, delirious with pain and morphine. "Sarge! Sarge, there's a kid in that bunker. Just a kid. What do we do?" A nurse tried to calm him, but he kept calling out, "Can't shoot a kid, Sarge. Can't do it. Even with the uniform, he's just a kid." Morrison felt ice in his veins. He struggled out of his bed, made his way over to the dying soldier despite the nurse's protests. "What's his name?" Morrison asked the nurse. "Miller. Private James Miller, 28th Infantry Division." Morrison leaned over the bed. "Miller. Private Miller. Can you hear me?" The kid's eyes focused slightly. Who are you?" "I'm Sergeant Morrison. You were talking about a kid in a bunker, in the Hürtgen. You found a German kid?" "Yeah," Miller whispered. "Just a kid. Maybe 14, 15. Scared shitless. My lieutenant said to shoot him. Said he was the enemy. We couldn't take prisoners. But I couldn't do it, Sarge. I couldn't shoot a kid. So I let him go. Told him to run." Morrison's breath caught. "When was this?" "Week ago. Maybe 10 days. We were clearing bunkers near Hill 232. Hill 232. Right where Morrison's squad had been operating. My lieutenant, he saw me let the kid go. Put me on report. Said I was a coward. Said I endangered the unit. Then the next day we got hit. Machine gun fire, I got shot. And all I could think was, maybe that kid picked up a rifle. Maybe he shot me. Maybe I got shot because I was soft. Listen to me," Morrison said urgently, gripping the dying soldier's hand. "You did the right thing. You hear me? The kid wasn't going to shoot anyone. He was just a scared boy who wanted to go home. What you did took courage. Real courage. You really think so?" "I know so, because I did the same thing. Same forest, same kind of kid, and I'd do it again." Miller's eyes cleared slightly, focusing on Morrison's face. A small smile played at his lips. Then maybe we're not all monsters. Maybe there's still some humanity left. He died 5 minutes later, Morrison still holding his hand. Morrison returned to his own bed, but he didn't sleep. He thought about that German kid, the one he'd let go. He thought about how many American soldiers had encountered similar situations, faced with children in uniforms, forced to make impossible choices. He thought about the photograph he'd taken from the kid's pocket, still tucked in his own jacket. A family, a home, a life before war. When Morrison recovered from his wounds, he was rotated home. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. He was discharged, returned to Iowa, tried to resume his normal life. But the Hürtgen Forest stayed with him. The faces of the men he'd lost, the decisions he'd made, and especially the face of that 15-year-old German boy, crying and begging for his life. Morrison never told anyone the full story, not his family, not other veterans. It was his burden to carry. He'd let an enemy soldier go, he'd violated every rule, and he'd never know if he'd made the right choice. But sometimes, late at night, when the memories of the war kept him awake, Morrison would take out that photograph. The German kid with his parents, 1943, a family still intact. And he'd tell himself that maybe, just maybe, that kid had made it home. Maybe he'd survived the war. Maybe Morrison's decision to spare him had meant that somewhere in Germany, a mother got her son back. Morrison lived with that hope. It was all he had. Years later, in 1952, Morrison received a letter. It had been forwarded through multiple channels: the Veterans Administration, Army records, someone who'd tracked him down. The envelope had German stamps. Inside was a single page, written in careful English. "Dear American Sergeant, I do not know your name. I do not know if you are the soldier who spared my life in the Hürtgen Forest in November 1944, but I am writing this letter to every American veteran I can find who fought in that place, hoping one of these letters will reach you. My name is Friedrich Weber. I was 15 years old when they conscripted me into the Wehrmacht in 1944. They gave me a uniform and a rifle and sent me to the Western Front with barely 2 weeks of training. I was assigned to a defensive position in the Hürtgen Forest. I was terrified every moment. I did not want to fight. I did not want to die. I just wanted to go home to my parents' farm. One day, American soldiers attacked our position. I hid in a bunker. 2 American soldiers found me. I thought they would kill me. I was certain I would die. But one of them, a sergeant I think by his insignia, he lowered his rifle. He looked at a photograph of mine, then showed me his own photograph. He told me to go west, to find Americans and surrender. He let me live. I did what he said. I walked west for 2 days. I found an American unit and surrendered. I spent the rest of the war in a prisoner camp in Belgium. When the war ended, they sent me home. My parents' farm had survived. I helped them rebuild. I went back to school. I became a teacher. I married. I have 3 children now. I have lived a full life because that American sergeant chose mercy over violence. He saw me not as an enemy, but as a human being, as someone's son. And he gave me the greatest gift anyone can give, a future. I do not know if you are that sergeant, but if you are, I want you to know, you made the right choice. You saved my life, and because of that, I have been able to do good in this world. I teach children. I tell them about the war, about the cost of hate, about the power of mercy. If you are not that sergeant, please pass this letter to anyone you know who might be. I want him to know that his moment of compassion changed everything. With eternal gratitude, Friedrich Weber, Westphalia, Germany. Morrison read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in his Bible, alongside the photograph he'd carried since 1944. He'd made the right choice. Against all logic, all tactical sense, all the rules of war, he'd made the right choice. Because sometimes, in the midst of humanity's worst, we get one chance to choose its best. One moment where we can see past the uniform to the person underneath. One opportunity to spare rather than destroy. Morrison had taken that chance. And somewhere in Germany, a teacher named Friedrich Weber was living proof that mercy, even in war, has power. That's all Morrison needed to know.